The City Council Committee of the Whole will meet in person on Tuesday, November 12th, 2024 at 6:00 p.m. for the purpose of discussing an update from Superintendent Stevens Reich on the state of the school district. This meeting will be held in City Council Chambers, 93 Washington Street, Salem, Massachusetts, second floor. Please click the link in the webinar to join. Absent are Councilors Merkel, Watson-Felt, Harvey, and Varela. We also have with us school committee members Hoffman and Manning, Dr. Reich, and Mayor Pangalo. So we're going to start with a presentation from Dr. Reich, give councilors a chance to ask any questions, and then if we have time, open it up to the public. So Dr. Reich, if you're ready, I don't know if you're able to share your presentation from where you are, or if you want me to share it from... Easiest way to do that.
Also, my computer. You have a
Join.
city's page.
Salem, Mass.
A place for me to share here.
Yeah.
I mean, I also can do it just from here, but
Yeah.
probably. Yeah. They have. That's right.
Oh.
Might be easier for me to throw. I think we got it. Hello? Okay, I think we're good. Muted. All right, am I going to get any feedback? I think we're good, right?
Good.
All right. All right, good evening. Are you ready for me to start? Counselor, okay. Thank you, City Council, for welcoming me here tonight, and I'm grateful to have also the support of two school committee members, Ms. Manning, Member Hoffman, and Mayor Pangalo. Thank you for being here. And I appreciate the opportunity to just share a lot of what's happening in the schools. I hope that tonight you'll get a sense of some of our successes and then areas for improvement. I try to be as open as possible about what some of our pain points are and opportunities to continue to improve. But I would say overall, very excited about the progress that we've made as a school system over the last few years. And I really, none of that would be possible without a strong city council, a really supportive school committee. And then obviously you all should be proud of how outstanding our educators are. And I think we have the best students in the Commonwealth, but I'm biased. So I'll just continue to say that none of this happens without those folks. And then of course we do have families, some of whom are here in this room, who are very supportive of the work that we're trying to do as a school system. I just want to remind folks that we're anchored by our three core values. And while people don't put a lot of stock in their values, I couldn't tell you how important these are, especially as we respond to things that happen in the community, across the country, and as we make decisions, to be anchored by three values that I feel very fortunate to work with a school committee that feels, I think, equally as strong about belonging, equity, and opportunity. And those values are ground the decisions that we make as a school district, how we use resources, and how we respond to different things that happen within internally and externally from the schools. I did want to share, there's a lot to celebrate as a school system. There's a video on the right, but I'm not sure I want to tempt the audiovisual gods here. But I do want to just share a couple things here. A lot of these photos are from last school year. On the upper left, you see some of our amazing staff that work in our schools and who are committed to connecting with our families. That's, four of our leaders who are hitting the pavement to meet families in the community, doing home visits. And the upper right is a video which you can watch at another time of our pep rally that we had in March, which was a terrific event where we celebrated the talents of students, our parents and our staff. They all performed. And we just had like a feel-good pep rally in March as a school district. In the lower left-hand corner, you see the students in our Student Voice Project. We have students at every school who are involved in trying to change the school system for the better, and their voices are part of the, they take on change projects. In the middle, you see teachers working on looking at student performance and data. We do what's called data-informed instruction, and teachers are consistently looking at how students are performing and adjusting their practice. And I commend our staff for diving into that work so that we're not just waiting till the end of the year to look at MCAS scores, but that we're consistently trying to respond to what students' needs are. And on the right, it is obviously that's our football team and their run to the Super Bowl last year. But I think it epitomizes just athletics has really elevated in Salem High School, not just athletics, but our extracurricular activities. This year, the band has had a banner year, unlike we've ever seen before. And I think it's just representative of like so much, there's tremendous talent in our school system. And there's a lot of spirit from being from Salem. I don't have the good fortune of being from Salem, but I know that it means a lot to so many people. And has been great over the last few years to see people coming back to celebrate our students, to see the alumni back for sporting events, for the music program, says a lot about the commitment that people feel for the city and our school system. And undefeated unified basketball. Thank you. Okay. Again, you have a copy of the core priorities in front of you, but that's what's on the screen. But I also gave you a handout, and I'm going to refer to these four. So my presentation is broken down in these four areas around our four core priorities from our strategic plan. We're almost exactly in the midpoint of our strategic plan. It was a 3-year plan that started last school year, and now we're halfway through year 2. And so you have, I'm going to give you an update of how we're doing and give you a reflection of each of our priorities. The four priorities are elevate learning, which is all about our academics and should be appropriately so is our number one priority. Our second is about how we empower our educators and how we encourage our educators to work, grow, and want to stay in the Salem Public Schools. The third is around how do we create a sense of connection and belonging for our youth and build communities that are welcoming and supportive for every child, regardless of who they are. And then the final is the infrastructure. It's the foundation of our work is how do we build systems and structures that truly disrupt inequity and support the core work of the district. So with each of these priorities, there's a series of core metrics, and those are on the screen or in the slides in front of you, and you can see how we measure success. And we have measures for each one of the priorities. And tonight I'm going to report out with the latest information I have on how we're doing relative to these measures. This is how we define success, and it's important that we're accountable to our community, to our elected officials, and to the public about how we're doing as a school system. My dream, and I think it's coming soon, is that we'll have a public dashboard so you'll be able to go on our website and see in real time how we're doing relative to these measures. All right, so the first is around, I'm going to first give you our scorecard, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the successes in every area. So these were the goals that we set out to accomplish, and you can see I've coded them yellow, green, and red. In this case, there's no reds, which I'm proud to share. But there are reds in some places, and it's important that we're honest about where we're struggling or where we're not making as much progress. We felt really good about our growth and achievement. Our growth overall was the highest growth on the MCAS that we've had in a long time in the Salem schools. Going back for the last decade, we were in the 50s, our goal is to be at 60, which is a very aggressive goal. But we had been consistently below 50 in the last few years, which anything above 50 means you're growing your students faster than other community or like students in the district. 40s is what they would call moderate growth, 50s is good growth, and 60s is fabulous growth. In achievement and proficiency rates, we have gave ourselves a yellow there. We have not seen the gains that we would like to see in grades 3 to 8, particularly in English language arts. we went backwards in English language arts, as did the state of Massachusetts, but we've seen steady increases in math since the pandemic. We've grown 7 percentage points in proficiency rates since the pandemic in math. So we're seeing steady gains in math in grades 3 to 8, but stagnation or decline in ELA, which is cause for concern. In grade 10, we saw some of the biggest increases I've ever seen in my career as an educator. We saw double-digit gains, and I don't have science on here, but ELA, math, and science, we saw double-digit gains across the 3 high schools. Obviously, Salem High has the largest number of students in that, and we had growth at the high school level that was in the 60s range, and so we were almost back at our pre-pandemic levels in performance in high school ELA and high school math, which I think is a real credit to the work that our high schools are doing, and we're very excited about that level of progress. We'd like to see more of that at grades 3 to 8. I think you'll hear more in a moment, but middle school is where we see the biggest concerns in performance. I think 3 to 5, we've seen some gains, but what brings down the overall 3 to 8 or mitigates some of the growth is our performance at the middle school level. Access is the test that we give for English language learners, for multilingual learners. And I have it as yellow. We're on our way to getting to 55%. But what I would say is that our 53% of students demonstrating progress is 6 percentage points higher than the state of Massachusetts. And so what we saw is that Salem actually, by holding at 43%, outpaced the rest of the state. And we have a graph that looks at all the other gateway cities that have large numbers of multilingual learners. And Salem was the top performing on the Access exam, which is a state assessment that looks at gains in English language development for students who are learning a second language. You can see advanced coursework. We're well on our way to making our goal. Our graduation rates, we're climbing to where we want to be, which is in the high 80s. And then the parents reporting confidence in our schools. This is a new data point we gave for the first time, a parent survey. We've never done that. We didn't have as many people fill it out because we gave it out late in the year, but it's a start, and it means it's a way for us to assess how we're doing relative to parents' perspective. And so we had 56 parents reporting high confidence or strong confidence in their child's ability to the education experience of their child. We'd like to see that number higher. A lot of times people fill out surveys because for a whole range, but we only had 300 families fill that out for this year, and so we want to get that number up. So these are some of the reflections around this elevating learning. I talked about the growth and achievement level. What I'm very excited and proud for our schools is that we met more improvement targets on the state accountability system than any of the gateway cities, the 26 gateway cities in Massachusetts. Salem was number 1. We had 2 schools of recognition, which there's only 57 schools named for recognition, and that was Salem High and Horace Mann were named for the percentage of targets that they hit, which is both achievement, growth. It includes other things like chronic absenteeism, graduation rates, dropout rates, and very proud. That's hard to do. And Saltonstall was right behind them in terms of meeting most of their targets. Every single one of our schools improved their accountability percentile from the year before. Only 8 of them get percentile targets because the others aren't big enough. The ECC serves little children, and then Salem Prep and New Liberty don't have enough students to be considered for accountability. But the other 8 schools all improved. And Collins, which was a school that was in the bottom 10%, came out of the bottom 10%. So Salem does not have any schools in the bottom 10% anymore. The only school that is in the bottom 20% is, or the bottom 21% is Collins Middle School. And they're clawing out very well, but not quite as fast. They're not quite there yet, but they were at the 11th percentile. And then every other school in Salem was above 20th percentile. I continue to be very pleased with the expansion of our pre-K mixed delivery model, which continues to grow. We added a pre-K classroom at Bentley School. We added a dual language pre-K program for the first time. And then I'm really excited about our students' continued access to advanced coursework. I think the challenges that we face are ELA performance is flat. I mentioned that before. Achievement at the middle school level. We decided to expand the middle school pilot, which is now the entire 8th grade experience. And if you look at the data of students that were part of the pilot in middle school versus the ones that weren't, and the demographics matched perfectly, the pilot outperformed the remainder of the school. And so we've now expanded that pilot so that all 8th graders have this experience, which is a lot more hands-on, more project-based, has learning immersions, or what we fancy name for field trips. And that experience is for every 8th grader. And we're starting to what we call tastes of that experience in 6th and 7th grade at both Saltonstall and at Collins Middle School. I do want our students to have more access to cognitively demanding work. I don't think there's enough students aren't getting enough at bats doing what I would consider to be cognitively demanding, critical thinking. I want students to write a whole lot more than they're being asked to do. And those are the conversations that were part of my job. People think superintendents are in their office crunching numbers all day, but I'm an instructional leader. I was a teacher, as a principal. I like being in classrooms, and I try to spend as much time as I can giving feedback around what we're seeing in classrooms. And what we need to see more of is our kids are ready to learn. They are so poised. They can do hard things. They can do harder things than when we ask them to do, and they always step up to the occasion. I think we just have to give them more opportunities to do that. And so that's my point here about having access to grade level text and writing skillfully in different genres. That's what we have to do more of in school. And then we have work to do as in terms of college and career preparation. It's not enough just to get more students to graduate. That's, to me, the floor. The ceiling is that when they graduate, they have choices, and they have the choice to go into any college they want or any career they want. And that should be their choice, not because we've underprepared them or we've pigeonholed them in one area. They should have the opportunity to make that decision on their own. And we're lucky in Salem to have both career opportunities and college opportunities, early college, internship opportunities. We have the CTE programs, and every child should be leaving us with the diploma plus a whole bunch of other stuff that allows them, like seal of biliteracy, workplace credentials, or college credits. That's what's going to make our students more marketable than other young people in the Commonwealth. The second area is around our educators. I think one of our biggest assets is our staff. And when I use the word educator, I'm talking about everybody who works in the school, whether you work in the kitchen, whether you're a custodian, or whether you're a teacher or principal, you're an educator. I consider myself an educator. Even though it's been a while since I was in the classroom, the reality is we all have a responsibility for educating our children. And so I'm really excited about some of the metrics here. We still have work to do to retain staff, but we've made some improvements in the last year. And I expect that number to be higher for this. Lags 1 year. We don't have the data yet for this school year, but we had fewer openings and less turnover for this school year than we've had since I've been here, since the pandemic. So that bodes very well. We really increased the percentage of staff of color, but we haven't arrived because there's still a gap between our student population and our staff. But you can see the growth over the last few years in both the percentage of staff of color and teachers of color. Staff is everybody who isn't teachers. Our well-being, we do survey our staff every year, and that we've been doing for a while. So we have survey results for a while, and this is just to measure how our staff feeling. It's natural. Everybody feels overwhelmed right now, but we are moving in the right direction around how staff are feeling. The area that I don't feel good about is staff is not receiving enough feedback, right? And the quality and the frequency, that's been this is from last year. So this has been a huge focus area for us in this school year. So some of the successes. I think this is probably a good time to talk about how we negotiated a new contract. As you see what's happening all around us, won't get into those details, but I'm really pleased with how the school committee and the STU worked so collaboratively to settle a contract, and we're able to have a year where we're not interrupted like some of our neighbors are, and that's huge. To have labor peace is so important, and I do applaud all the people at the table. It was not an easy process, but unlike other communities, our teachers union, our school committee negotiated through the summer and worked really hard so that on the eve of school starting, we had a negotiated contract and were able to, be more competitive, offer benefits that we think our staff should have, and be able to have school without interruption. That's really important. We have improved staff retention. We do think salaries were an important part of that, along with benefits. And already we've seen the benefits of having a settled contract that I think speaks to our commitment to our staff. We have worked hard to hire a more diverse pool. It was helpful during the pandemic to have emergency licensures that allowed more people to get into the field who were not traditionally, and gave us some of the flexibilities that charter schools have in terms of being a little more flexible around certification. Because I happen to believe that sometimes those certifications are a piece of paper and not necessarily tells you how connected they are to our youth and to our city. And there's a lot of really talented folks who are paraprofessionals who work for the Boys and Girls Club at the YMCA, LEAP, who have become excellent teachers with us because there was some flexibility on getting them certified. We have increased opportunities for staff to give us feedback on the quality and the relevance of professional learning. We have now a standard form that we use across the system. So we're collecting data on which schools are hitting the mark and which ones aren't in terms of the professional development that people received. We've worked hard on trying to put in some healthier, initiatives around work-life balance. We work closely. I have a teacher advisory group who gives me really good, candid feedback about things that we can improve as a system. And then we've really expanded under Laura Saad's work, who many of you know, our affinity groups for staff of color in the school district. As I mentioned before, we got to get better on quality and quantity of feedback. Our retention rates are not as good for staff of color, and we want to dig into that and better understand what is it that isn't keeping them in the profession or keeping them in Salem as much as we would like. I see an opportunity we're working closely with an outside funder to have a Grow Your Own program. So we have pipelines of our students to become educators and to invest in their education so they come back and serve us as students. And we want to find alternative ways to get our paraprofessionals and support staff licensed into school. Staff attendance is an issue that we candidly, not just Salem, but a lot of districts have. And we know that it's important that for kids that staff is present each and every day. And so how do we incentivize staff attendance? We did put some provisions in the contract as incentives for staff that if they don't use all their personal time, it can roll over into sick time. And then we have a provision around if the whole district has meets a certain benchmark around attendance that there's less time, that staff have to give less professional time the following year, because we want to do whatever we can to incentivize staff to be in school. We do know there's a need for staff to better understand our standards-based practices and grading. We get that feedback a lot. And our staff is telling us they want more support on how we serve students with disabilities and multilingual learners. So the third priority is around belonging. And you can see this is all about how people feel, how our students, specifically our students and our families feel about our schools. We're mixed here with green and yellow. Our chronic absentee and dropout rate has really improved over the last 5 years. We were number 1 in number 3 in chronic absenteeism of the gateway cities. And chronic absenteeism is defined as missing a percentage of students who miss 10% of days or more. And some of the students that are part of this number have long-term illnesses or significant issues but some of it comes down to their level of engagement in school. And to me, chronic absenteeism was always a proxy for engagement. How it's not just that kids are getting more sick in Salem than other places. I do think it's a sign of how healthy our schools are, because if kids want to go to school, if students are excited about going to school, particularly middle and high schoolers, they'll come to school. And that's why we've got to continue to create opportunities for students about when they want to come to school. It's no surprise that at the middle school, on the days they had learning immersions, the attendance was like 99.9%, right? Kids come when they know that when there's something exciting to do. And so we've got to try to do that 180 days a year. And that can be in the form of extracurricular activities. That's in the form of field trips. It's in the form of having dynamic learning opportunities for them. It could be the food. I mean, there's whatever excites them. We've got to make sure we do more of that. And that's why it's important to listen to what our young people have to say. We don't have enough of our students who feel that they're valued in school. We've seen some improvement, but we'd like to see that number continue to grow in terms of percentage of students who feel valued. And then our families reporting that their child's school is a good fit. We're well on our way toward meeting that goal, and that comes from the survey that we just gave our families. And then risk ratio is a new data point that we're looking at, which looks at the discrepancy for students of color and students with disabilities, and how to what extent are they more frequently being disciplined in our schools. And we're looking to have a risk ratio not much greater than 1, and that's in comparison to white students and students without disabilities. And so you can see our risk ratios are is higher than we'd like them to be for students of color and our students with disability. In particular, I worry about, we do see a high number of students with disabilities who also are students of color being disciplined at higher rates in our school. And that's something, that's not just an issue that Salem has, that's a statewide issue, a national issue, but it's something we've got to examine, like why the frequency for certain kids more than others. Yeah, you have a question?
Can you just define disabilities?
Anybody who has an IEP.
An IEP.
Yep. So anybody in that category has an IEP. So that's just an area that we're going to be giving a presentation to the school committee in the next month about our work in this area and how do we incorporate more restorative practices as a district. So our successes, you can see, I feel really, Salem has a strong mental health counseling system and structure as I've ever seen. And that has nothing to do with me. That was here before I came. We have a partnership with City Connects, and we have more counselors in our schools than any district I've been a part of. And we've also expanded to include telemental health with our partnership with Cartwheel, and that has continued post-pandemic. So there's a lot of access for young people. Our attendance teams in schools have worked really hard to decrease incidents of chronic absenteeism and our dropout rate. We worked hard in knowing every child by name, reaching out to families. As a matter of fact, next week we're doing phone banking. We're taking every student in the district who has more than 8 absences, and we are calling their houses, not to berate parents, not to tell them that they're bad parents, but to say, what can we do to help? Like to get your child to school more. We've noticed that your child has missed X number of days. How can we be of support? We expect to get feedback about transportation. We expect to get feedback about, there could be bullying, there could be food insecurity, there could be housing insecurity. And that's how we can be helpful to try to get young people back into school. And so we're making those calls more as ambassadors of the school district, and trying to figure out how we can be supportive to families whose children are having trouble coming to school. Our Student Voice Project, which I had a picture of there before, has been a great addition, so that we're hearing the voices of young people about how we can improve our schools. Despite what anybody thinks, the best ideas for how to improve schools come from the youth who experience it every day. And if you want to if anytime I want a sobering sense of what we need to do differently as a school system, our kids are the most honest about what needs to improve. And so we've got to continue to hear what they have to say. We also hear that having diverse, high quality educators matters for kids, for our diverse population. And that has a huge impact on the mental health of young people, is when they have staff that look like themselves in our schools. And then we have to continue to expand high interest programs, both during and after the school day. And we now have a parent advisory council. It hasn't met yet this year, but it met all of last year, and it will meet this year again. So I have a parent advisory, I have a student advisory, the teacher advisory, and all of those groups go a long way to keeping us grounded on what our constituents really want in our schools. Disproportionality is something I want to continue to look at, and we want to examine schools where we see high levels of disproportionality in exclusionary practices. And then health education is a pain point for us. We do now have 2 health teachers at the middle school level, but it's inconsistent, and we need to go down into the elementary grades as well. We think health education is really important. We want to turn our parent information center, I think I mentioned this when I was here last year, into truly a welcome center for families. So you don't just come when you register, you can come all the time, and you can get information on how we can support you. We've been working with the city on the On Point building here that, in the Point neighborhood, and that we want to turn that into a welcome center. But our practices need to change as well in the system about that. Registering for school is not just transactional. It's all, when you come to our school system, we're going to embrace you, and we're going to connect you to other resources in the community. And then, we want to continue to strengthen school culture and the support services so that every student feels like they belong in our school. Right now, while we think we're moving in the right direction, not every child feels like they belong in our schools and feel connected to our school communities. The final priority is around our foundation. And there's a lot happening in the system right now, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, that I'll speak to. These are green, but I would say a little misleading, because, our response to work orders within 2 days being green is because just because they submit it doesn't mean that it gets fixed. It just means they get a response in 2 days. So that was a little bit of that data point's misleading. We look better than we are. We don't fix everything in 2 days. So I just want to call ourselves out for that. But we did get some good feedback from our school leaders about central office areas, 80% favorable response on the different departments. Transportation is still an issue that, is in Salem. Transportation is always going to be a perennial challenge for us, given the number of students we transport. But staff is also telling us that they have access to the materials and information that they need generally. I mean, again, we're not perfect, but we feel like we've made a lot of progress in that area, and that comes from our staff survey. So a couple of things. Really excited, obviously, about our new high school building project. There's a series of meetings upcoming, which I would invite you all to come around the building project to begin to familiarize yourself with the project. And we're going to be engaged in a conversation around whether to build a 7 to 12 or 9 to 12 grade configuration. That's coming over the next month and a half to 2 months. And the school committee will ultimately be charged with making that decision. I don't have the dates here, but I'll make sure you have the flyer that has Meg's on the building committee, or Councilor Stott, is on the committee, but everybody's invited to come to these sessions. The building meetings are also public meetings, and really encourage you to be part of these conversations, which are really exciting for this district and for the future of the city. It's a once in a generation opportunity, and it's coming faster. It feels like it's a slow process, but it's all of a sudden picking up steam as we're getting closer and closer to having shovels in the ground, hopefully in the next 2 years. We just completed a policy equity audit, which I'm happy to get you a copy of, that we presented to the school committee, although the school committee doesn't yet have the final version of it, but it looked at to what extent are our policies supporting our equity statement and what we believe. And so we got some very good feedback there. I'm really pleased with the support we received from the city through CAP and from all of you. We just opened a brand new beautiful playground at Witchcraft, an accessible playground that's a long way coming, and we're looking to build a new play space for Bates for the early childhood to replace a very outdated early childhood space. So I'm grateful for that support. And through the city, we've leveraged capital and COVID relief funding to address heating and cooling issues. In many of our schools, we've been able to replace boilers. We've been able to address some of the systems that are that needed work. I'm very proud of the work that we've done with safety and emergency preparation. Under the direction of Lisa Golden, who used to work at Collins. We've worked hard to try to implement a lot of the best practices around school safety. We've learned a lot in Salem because of some of the emergency. I never thought we'd have smoke that would interrupt our school day recently, but we've learned a lot through all these, and we do after action reports. We've fortified our front door systems. We're working with the Sandy Hook Promise now, which is a national organization around anonymous reporting of threats. And so really pleased with that work. And then, the city's made good use of MSBA funding, both for the high school project, and we've just notified that we have funding coming for a brand new roof at Bates that was necessary, is needed. And then I think we worked hard to enhance transportation services. Under the direction of Vanessa Fagundes, who unfortunately just left, we have really revitalized transportation in the sense that now we have a tracking system to see ridership. We have parents can track buses on apps, on a parent app. And thanks to the support of the city, we also now have the stop arm cameras that can track violations of people, blowing through stop arms. This is all new enhancements to keep our children safe and to ensure that parents have better tracking of where their students are. So some opportunities and challenges. We have proposed the phase out of Salton Stalls Middle School, or at least I've proposed that to the school committee, and the school committee is deliberating that as we speak. And I think a final decision could come next Monday. And so that's been an important recommendation in terms of how do we strengthen the middle school experience for all students in Salem. We've heard a lot of feedback, both in support and against it. And I know the school committee's considering that decision carefully. We, in the news recently, this Salem Academy charter expansion request, I'll just say that we have to continue to work closely with Salem Academy. I pledged to do that. I was not happy about the way it played out. Didn't feel like we were engaged in the process. And I also, this is not a slight on Salem Academy. I also think that in this moment of time, this is not needed. While I think Salem Academy does a lot of great work for our young people and has had success, I think the Salem Public Schools is having a lot of success as well. And to shift resources right now, I think is not in the best interest of the city. And that's not a Salem Academy conversation. That's our conversation with the Department of Education, their board, with the commissioner. And we think on the merits of some of the progress, a lot of the progress made, this is not the right time for charter expansion in Salem. But we have to continue to work, and we will work closely with Salem Academy to best serve our kids moving forward. And there's probably a lot more that we can do to collaborate. And I pledge to do that. I do want to first make sure that the charter expansion doesn't go through, and then we will continue to work closely to serve the children of the city, which I know Salem Academy does as well. We have a lot of work to do on our budget balancing this year. We settled a new contract. We have the cost of doing business is going up. Obviously the city has constraints as well. We're going to have to make some important decisions, and we're going to have to right size some of our services and our programs. And we're in the process of starting to do that now. And we have to do so equitably. We need to make sure that we're using resources and leveraging them in the best way to meet the needs of our youth. But we're preparing for a very challenging budget season, which we didn't know we would be heading into, especially as we we did what we needed to do with our contract, and I have no regrets, and nobody should feel our staff should not have to apologize for that, but we do need to right size in order, and that's going to come with some tightening of our belts as a school district, and you'll hear more about that. I think there needs to be more examination of controlled choice, the assignment policy in the Salem Public Schools. I know the school committee still wants to tackle that conversation, and there's a lot of things we're trying to do right now, and so, but this is on the list of as we think about what the new configuration of the building is going to be, and we think about the future of the school system, we have to look at controlled choice and whether that's the right thing to do, have neighborhood schools or allow for choice in our system. And I know the school committee is prepared to have those conversations in the near future. AI is here, artificial intelligence, and how we use them in schools. We can't ignore that. We have a team that just went to a conference at MIT, and this is a huge opportunity and challenge for us at the same time, as there's lawsuits around the state already in districts around the use of artificial intelligence in schools. I don't think I think we have to lean into it, but we have to put boundaries and parameters, and we have to teach our young people and our staff how to use it responsibly. And we will be doing that. We have a cross-functional team we have an advisor from MIT who will be helping us think about what the implementation will be for our school district and how to use AI responsibly. We still want to implement a system for addressing bias and microaggressions in our school district. Laura has been working hard to replicate some of what the city has already done. We have a different responsibility when it comes to children and our employees, and so we are working on figuring that out from a legal standpoint. And then the final things I just say is human resources is a place that we want to continue to improve. Our mechanism, we want to move away from being transactional. This is where you come and get hired and get your paperwork and your benefits, to we're truly welcoming for staff, and we're creating systems that allow the most talented and diverse people to come and stay in the Salem Public Schools. And then finally, I did talk about the public dashboard. So I would love that those green, yellow, red lights to be available to people who want to see this at all times. Some of these data points are updated nightly, and some of them are, yearly or quarterly, but I do think our public has a right to see how we're doing as a school system. If they wake up in the middle of the night and just are curious about how we're doing, they can see our public dashboard. We have a lot of internal dashboards. We just haven't released it yet publicly. So the last thing I'd say is our mantra for the school year. I just read this great book called Atomic Habits, so I did it over the summer, and I'm really struck by this quote: "You do not rise to the level of your goals; you fall to the level of your systems." And I see the unfinished work left in Salem Public Schools is system building. We've got to continue to build strong systems. It's not just about setting ambitious goals, because even as the book points out, every team sets the goal of winning the championship at the beginning of the year, but only one team can win the championship. And so for us, it's about obviously we want to be champions, but it's about continue to build systems that strengthen our ability to serve kids in the Salem Public Schools. And then with that, I'd open up to questions. Thank you for listening and for your interest in our public schools.
Thank you, Dr. Zweig. Any questions for Dr. Zweig?
And if I can't answer them, these people can answer them.
Absolutely. Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I noticed there wasn't anything about the CTE program, and it seems to have a positive effect on retaining and maybe adding students. And, I know Councilor Prosnowski and I have been involved in some programs. I'm on the board of the renewable energy team, and it seems like we're able to offer disciplines that even Essex Tech and other schools are not. But maybe you could talk a little bit about the direction, and I think as an achievement for the district.
Yeah. One of the reasons I didn't talk too much about CTs, I feel like I've talked a lot about that when I've been here before. And so I'm trying to keep it fresh a little bit too. I'm really proud of the work we've done in CTE. We continue to expand our programming We've proposed additional programs, programming and web and carpentry, and we think we're going to get a favorable support from the state in those areas. And obviously, those spaces loom large as we build a new facility. But we continue to see a lot of demand. We have students from Beverly who come to us every day, even during their strike. The kids are coming because they come for the CTE programs in the afternoon. We have a subset of students. We have students from New Liberty. We have students from Salem Prep who utilize the CTE programs, and we still have over half of the students at Salem High accessing those programs. I think we want to continue to be one of the few high schools in the state that offers the opportunity to do both early college and CTE, which is very unique. We're not telling kids that you can pick one or the other. And one of the things that Mario and the CTE department have done really well is also continue to strengthen our relationships with with the businesses and industry, with offshore wind. They have their advisory board. I think meeting is tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? You know the schedule better than I do, but it's tomorrow. And we continue to strengthen I want to see more kids have the opportunity to do internships, especially their junior and senior year, when they've met a lot of the credits and they've fulfilled many of the requirements. That should be a time for them to be able to explore both around higher education and career exploration. So again, I probably should have said more about it, but I do know it's received a lot of attention, and rightfully so.
Councilor Jerslow.
Thank you, President Hapworth. Great presentation. Thank you. How strong do you think your guidance department is for guidance counselors when it comes to preparation for college applications? I had 2 children that went through the school systems, and that was one of the big issues when it came time they got more help from the librarians than they did from the guidance counselors. And that was it's a big process and a very lot of anxiety goes into that. So I just wonder if you could talk on that.
Yeah, well, it's one of the areas that I have as an opportunity and a challenge. I think that's an area we'd like to see improvement. We did a full audit last year and had an outside organization come in and look and give us recommendations about how to strengthen our that process. I think we feel I think we're on a path for improvement, but it needs to be better. We need to see more kids who are getting the support they need around their applications to write their personal statements. And that doesn't just start when you're a junior or senior. That should start, that actually should even start in middle school as they start thinking about what their options are. And so what's the curriculum look like for preparation in college and career counseling? And that is an area that we need to continue to strengthen. There are a lot of first generation college goers at Salem High School and across our campuses, and their families don't always know how to navigate. Even if you went to college yourself, it's a very challenging process to navigate. Financial aid, what are the different options, private versus public, scholarships, super complicated. And this is an area that a lot of public high schools struggle, traditional public high schools struggle. I think we can learn from the private schools. I think charter schools we can learn from in this area as well. And so that's one of our top priorities. It's in the strategic plan. And as I noted tonight, is definitely one of the areas that we can improve on in priority 1, which is elevating learning for all. Because ultimately it's got to be more than I think too many schools, not calling out Salem High, celebrate just giving kids a diploma at the end, and that's the floor. I mean, we shouldn't be patting ourselves on the back for having high numbers of students graduating. I want to know that our kids are graduating and excelling when they leave, and that's why early college is so important for our students to have experience in college while they're in high school. I'm not sure if that was available when your children were there, but now we have over 160 students taking college courses at the high school level. And that's an important place to start. But I also want to make sure that that once they leave us, they persist when they get to college and they don't become a dropout statistic once they get there.
Your daughter did take classes at Salem.
Oh, she did. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
It was a great program.
What do you see, Counselor, go ahead, Counselor Marcelo.
My question is, and I don't know if this is tracked somewhere else, but why isn't this teacher absenteeism tracked like the student absenteeism is in this
Yeah.
with a call out?
Well, so we believe the state is going to start tracking that data, and we're going to have to start reporting that. It hasn't happened yet, but that's my understanding. We do have that data. It's not as clean as I would like, and so I don't want to report out on something that I don't know is accurate, especially because, you have to pull out people who are maternity leaves and who have paternity leaves and who also are out, for long-term, illness and family medical leave. But that is something that we are starting to track more closely. We just put together a set of guidelines for staff around attendance, and that's something that I think districts were hesitant right after COVID because, staff, there was a lot of issues with people being sick and so forth. But now we do have to tighten up. And I don't think it's, I don't want to say that I think it's a small number of people, but that has a huge impact on morale in schools. And I think we have a responsibility to have conversations with people about, their attendance if we think that there's abuse of that. And so I do think you're going to see more of that being reported even at the state level, because this is a concern that we're seeing, we don't just see in Salem, that I think everybody's grappling with in terms of attendance at work. But I would say stay tuned. I mean, I will say the STU has been a good partner around this, and we've had really good conversations, and they support the same thing because we have so many hardworking people in our schools, and it's deflating to them when there are a small number of people who are abusing it, but that can have a huge impact on a school.
I mean, I would echo that it's deflating for teachers, faculty, and for students.
Absolutely.
I mean, students know exactly what's going on there. So,
Yep.
What impact would you see as the potential salt install phase out? What impact do you feel that would have on middle school performance? Is that something that's been a factor, something that's been considered?
Well, I think, I think we've seen a lot of progress with our middle school pilot that's now the 8th grade experience. It'll be a lot easier to offer that experience in one place as opposed to right now we're doing it on 2 different campuses. I do think with the types of services and experiences that we know middle schoolers want and need, we can provide more of that at one school rather than 2 campuses. I think it's really hard to offer a high quality middle school experience when you only have 2 classes per grade. And that's not a slight on the staff there or the administration there. I think they're working as hard as they can, but they're limited because of the services that they're unable to provide. With a K-8, there's 9 grades. We have multilingual learners. We have special education students. We have academic coaches that have to be spread out in ways that they don't have to be in the other schools. And so I do think we can better serve kids. I think we're seeing both schools have struggled. So I don't want to say that achievement is better at one school than the other. They're roughly about the same. But the engagement right now is better at Collins than it is at Saltonstall. And a lot of that has to do with the programming, the experiences that kids have. I mean, there's so many activities. I have a son that goes to a middle school in another district, and Collins blows away what offerings they have that almost any other school in this area has. And this will allow every child in Salem to have access to those experiences. So ultimately, I do think engagement leads to outcome. That's as I've watched post-pandemic, if we don't engage kids, it doesn't matter what the test scores aren't going to improve if kids aren't excited and engaged around being in school. And I think we have the best shot of doing that by having all our middle schoolers attend Collins.
Councilor Prosnowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Strike. You've put on a very good presentation, which shows us where we're at and where we're going, and the differences between now and what it used to be in the past. You want to thank you for your leadership and your determination for what you've done for the Salem schools, which are now turning around and being admired. You're obviously on the right track, and hats off. Keep going in the right direction. I know that we're in the process of a feasibility study for a new high school, and I think the old high school doesn't meet the needs that the future of this city needs for educating our children. You have to take a look. You have the responsibility of taking a look at where education is going, and we have to take a look at the responsibility of where the city is going. I know that the vocational part of it, the CTE programs, are going to be expanded, I believe, to address the needs of the community in this area. One of them being the Maritime Services Program, which I know that you've already taken an interest in and taken a look at to see how the students of today can get jobs in this community to the growing waterfront industry that Salem's about to experience, but not just counting the wind project, but the future of the commercial pier and the cruise industry and everything that comes with it. We're going to need marine workers, whether it's logistically on land or at sea. You know, our heritage, our maritime heritage, kind of points us in that direction. It's nice to see it coming around full circle. With that said, you know, now the Salem High School, now the majority of the portion of it is towards the regular high school learning, whereas a small part of it is to vocational. What are the plans for the new high school? The way that it's going to be broken down. Have you got any input on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the timing couldn't be better for you to ask that question, because I think we're about to dive into what that could look like, and we're going to start that with these public meetings now. So we have an architect now on board who can help us start thinking about what that might look like, whether it's going to be a grade 7 to 12 or 9 to 12, where the vocational spaces are. I know the field house is a big question, because that's a beautiful field house, and that's not something that's commonly built anymore. Can that be retained? Is this a rebuild, or is it a renovation? These are all questions that are coming up right now, and I would love to invite you to any of those meetings. I'll also say that thankfully, you should be thankful that I'm not the one that is designing this building, because I have no background in that. But fortunate for Salem is that the group of the building committee is a pretty remarkable group of individuals, many of whom have design experience, who happen to be residents, design and construction experience, who happen to be residents of this city, and I think who are going to lead us in the right direction, especially around how we interface with the designer and the project manager. And so I'm very optimistic that good decisions are going to be made that are going to, I think that we can all be proud of for a long time to come. But this is the moment to get involved and share. I mean, this is a public process. I mean, this is not meant to be hidden, and we want all eyes on what this is going to look like. So for the next, year and a half to 2 years before the, shovel goes into the ground, these are the kinds of conversations we want to have, and we want input. That's a pretty massive site up there, and there's a lot you can do with it. I mean, some of it, there's some things you can't do with it, but there's a lot that we can think about. And I think these are the conversations that we'll be having, and we want everybody to be involved. So please come and weigh in.
Gladly. Thank you for that.
Any other questions for Dr. Strike? Thank you, Dr. Strike. Appreciate it. Anything? Sorry, Councilor Stott.
Thank you, President Hapworth. And thank you, Dr. Drake, for your presentation as always. I think you get brownie points for putting a junior counselor photo in there. So, okay, I don't know if anybody else saw it. Always appreciate the data-driven aspect of your presentations that you provide. I just had one quick question, but I'll start first with the comment about the building project. It's definitely really been great to be able to serve on that committee for 2 years. And I think I said at the last meeting, it's really getting real now. We've chosen the designer, the manager, project manager, and ideas and concepts are being shown now. This has definitely been something that's been under discussion for a long time. I don't know if everyone remembers at the beginning of the pandemic, we utilized a firm to do a lot of community meetings about the different figurations of schools and possibilities and things like that. And now it's, we're getting to we need to make decisions of how things will move forward and how things will be finalized. So it's just super exciting to finally be there. There are so many pieces to the puzzle that you've touched on, like the controlled choice school assignment, pre-K, different building usage, all of that. So it's a lot of pieces of the puzzle, but I want everybody to know that this is not something that, we're making decisions in 2 weeks or 2 months, that these are conversations that have been going on as a community for years. And we have to make a decision to move forward in order to do what's best. I did have a really quick question. You mentioned it briefly about the On Point Welcome Center. That's usually a question during budget season as well, but how close are we to that?
Mayor, can I call on you for that one? It's the first time I've deferred to you, Mayor, so.
So we have the cost estimates for the design to move forward. I don't think we have a funding identified yet to be able to meet the costs that we need to do it. We had applied for some federal funding opportunities that didn't quite work out, and we're going to keep pushing for some other opportunities. But at this point in time, we're at a place where the building is conceptually designed, the layout's done. We know roughly what the costs are going to be, but I don't think we've identified the funding yet to, and it may be something that comes before this council for the FY26 capital plan. But like with most of our capital needs, if there's an opportunity to find other sources to pay for it, we're going to try to pursue those first.
If I may follow up. So I guess on that note, what's the plan to create that welcome parent center in the current environment that it's in now? Are we?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say from a timing perspective, best case scenario, even if this is something that comes to the council for next fiscal year, it wouldn't be ready in time. Like there's going to be time for construction process and everything. So, no matter what, we have to plan to continue having the parent information center in its current location. I'll defer back to Dr. Zoe.
Yeah, I mean, I think regardless of what space we're in, we have to rethink the approach. And so right now we're in Collins. If we stay there for however long, it still needs to be a welcome center. And it's still way too transactional. We're already starting to make the moves to do that. And that's under Laura. Laura is now in her role for year 2. And so she's starting to make some of the shift and how we think about translation and interpretation services there, the homeless supports for families, all kinds of, we want to do more parent trainings. That can happen. Obviously, the On Point location would be a better location to do all that in terms of proximity, but that shouldn't stop us from doing what we think is the right, to rebrand and reposition what that information center. It shouldn't be called the Parent Information Center anymore because it has, the legacy is just about enrolling your child.
Councilor Cohen.
Thanks, President. I just have a quick shout out to the Unified Sports Program. Was lucky enough to join Mary Manning at a banquet a few years ago and cried through the whole thing. The level of sportsmanship is amazing. We're at the senior day against Swampscott in the basketball, and the way that these athletes support each other is something that it would be great if we could share with other students and other people in the community, because it's really extraordinary and it's kind of uplifting in a lot of ways.
Councilor Morsell.
Thank you. I also want to thank you for all the data and the focus. I mean, it's really clear over the past couple of years that there's been a lot of focus by the school committee on these items, and you're definitely making progress, and there's a lot of great stuff going on in the school. This might seem like a crazy question, but what are you worried about, and what's keeping you up at night?
I think the budget's keeping me up at night. Again, I'm grateful that we settled our contract, but I knew when we did that, and we all knew, right, that it was going to come with some tough decisions. Unfortunately, the funding from the state isn't keeping pace for cities and for school districts, and I'm worried about that. I don't know what the funding is going to look like for public education in the coming years. And that definitely keeps me up at night, because I think we're in a good place as a system. We have a lot to improve on and work to do, and but we're on a good path, and I don't want to dismantle any of that. And that's what keeps me up at night, because I feel like, you know, the work is moving at a pretty good pace. We have a lot of returning administrators. We have a lot of returning educators. That makes a big difference for kids. And it's starting to show in our results after a tough couple of years coming out of the pandemic. And so anything that interrupts that is, that's what keeps me up at night, because I think we have the right people. I think we're lucky to have a school committee and a city that cares about education. That's not true everywhere. We have good relationships with one another. There's not a lot of tension. And that's what our kids deserve, right? Like that the adults are doing their part. And I think that's happening in Salem. So, and that's a credit to everybody here. It's just that, you know, the funding keeps us up at night. And a lot of that is not in the control of the people here. There's a lot of unknowns, you know, and Salem never got its fair share, you know, of the Opportunity Act. It really didn't. While other districts saw gains, that formula did a major disservice to the city. And that's not anybody's fault in this room. And I know the mayor and the former mayor have advocated very strongly, and the state rep and our state senator, but it's proven to be problematic as we try to do, it's a heavy lift, but we're doing work that, that other gateway cities have not been able to do because of, I think, the dedication of so many people in the city. And so, that's a long way of saying, money.
Any other comments from the councilors? I will move to public comment. I'm not sure if there will be any. Anybody who's in the room right now, including school committee members, the mayors, anything else you wanted to add or any questions you all had? We have one attendee. Any interest in public comment? I assume not.
Can I just
Sure, go
add
ahead.
one more thing? I would also just invite city councilors, if you want to come visit the schools, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to show you. Please eat at the Black Cat Cafe. I haven't been there yet, but I hear good things. I think but I encourage you to, I'd love for you to visit our schools. That's the best way to showcase these slides. The pictures don't do justice to what happens every day. So.
We really appreciate the hard work that you all putting in here. I can say from my own experience, knocking on doors for my first campaign 5 years ago, whether it was true or not, there was a perception, I think, in the community that the schools were headed in the wrong direction for many doors I knocked on. Not something the council has any ownership over necessarily, but it's something that people want to talk about at the doors for sure. And then I think last year, a noticeable difference in the way that people at least feel that the direction the schools are going in. And I think looking at this presentation and seeing the data that you provided here, I think it's a very clear, reason why, and we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. Any motions? Councilor Stott.
Make a motion to receive and file the presentation from Dr. Drake.
Councilor Stott moves to receive and file, seconded by Councilor Prosnewski. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Any other motions? Councilor Prosnewski.
Motion to adjourn.
Councilor Prosnewski moves to adjourn. All those in favor? Any opposed? We are adjourned.